It was a quiet, moonlit night when a group of leather-clad bikers rumbled into the woods on roaring motorcycles. Their faces were hard, their movements quick, as if they were on a mission they didn't want anyone to know about. Carrying shovels and a mysterious, heavy bag, they vanished into the shadows of the forest. But what they didn't realize was that someone else was watching. Hidden high above in the dense branches of a tree, a man with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor observed their every move. He wasn't just any bystander. This was Jack Ryder, a former CIA agent with a knack for uncovering secrets. And tonight, he'd stumbled onto something that didn't sit right. As the bikers worked hurriedly, Jack leaned in closer, his curiosity burning. What were they burying? And why? Little did they know, their secret wouldn't stay buried for long. Jack stayed perfectly still, his years of training kicking in as he studied the scene below. The bikers worked in grim silence, their tattoos and scars illuminated faintly by the beam of a single flashlight. He could hear the faint rustle of leaves and the occasional clang of a shovel hitting something hard. Whatever they were burying, it wasn't just trash or junk. Jack's mind raced. He'd seen plenty during his time in the CIA. Smuggling operations, covert handoffs, things most people couldn't imagine. But this was different. These weren't just criminals. Their movements suggested a deeper purpose. He caught glimpses of nervous glances exchanged among them, as if they weren't entirely sure of each other. Then one of them spoke, his gravelly voice barely audible. "You sure this spot's safe?" "Yeah," another replied. "No one will ever find it." Jack smirked to himself. Asterisk they already did asterisk. As the bikers finished their task, they stood around the freshly packed dirt, their expressions a mix of relief and unease. One of them, a tall man with a jagged scar across his cheek, lit a cigarette, the flicker of his lighter briefly illuminating the tension etched on his face. "Let's hope this doesn't come back to bite us," he muttered, exhaling a cloud of smoke into the cool night air. Another, shorter but stocky, leaned closer. "It won't, as long as we stick to the plan. No loose ends, remember?" His voice carried a sharp edge, a warning to the group. From his perch, Jack noted the way their leader, an older man with a grizzled beard, stood slightly apart, his eyes scanning the woods. Did he sense they weren't alone? Jack shifted his weight carefully, making no sound. He needed to see what was buried, but getting too close too soon could blow his cover. As the bikers mounted their motorcycles and rode off, the forest fell silent again. Jack slid down from the tree, his boots landing softly on the forest floor. He approached the site cautiously, flashlight in hand. Whatever they had buried, it was more than just a secret, it was trouble. And Jack wasn't about to walk away from it. Jack crouched by the disturbed soil, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The freshly packed dirt had a damp, earthy smell, and his instincts told him this wasn't just a random hiding spot. He brushed his fingers over the surface, feeling the faint indentations left by the shovels. Whatever was beneath him held the key to why those bikers had risked coming out here in the dead of night. But as Jack reached for his small folding spade, a sound froze him in place, a faint rustle in the distance. His hand instinctively moved to the concealed knife at his side. He scanned the shadows, every muscle in his body tense. Was it an animal? Or had one of the bikers doubled back to ensure no one was snooping around? Suddenly, he heard the low rumble of engines in the distance. They were coming back. His mind raced. Had they realized they were being watched? Or was there something about this site they weren't done with yet? Jack quickly extinguished his flashlight and slipped into the cover of a thick pine tree, his heart pounding. The bikers wouldn't know he was there, but if they found him, he'd be outnumbered. As the sound of the motorcycles grew louder, Jack prepared for what might be a very dangerous encounter. The growl of the engines grew louder, and Jack's pulse quickened as he crouched deeper into the shadows. From his hidden vantage point, he could see the headlights piercing through the trees, the beams bouncing wildly over the uneven ground. The bikers weren't alone this time. Two black SUVs followed closely behind, their tinted windows gleaming in the moonlight. Jack's mind raced. This wasn't just a gang stashing something illegal. SUVs like those usually meant organized players, people with resources and connections. He watched as the vehicles rolled to a stop, their doors swinging open. A group of men in dark suits stepped out, their sharp, purposeful movements starkly different from the rugged demeanor of the bikers. The bikers exchanged tense glances as the leader of the newcomers stepped forward. "Is it done?" he asked, his voice calm but cold. "Yeah, it's buried," the grizzled biker replied, though his tone carried an edge of uncertainty. But this wasn't the deal. We weren't expecting anyone else to show up. The man in the suit gave a tight smile, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. "Plans change. Show us the spot." From his hiding place, Jack felt the weight of the moment shift. The bikers were nervous, and the men in suits were clearly in control. Whatever was buried out here wasn't just dangerous, it was valuable. And now, with the two groups facing off, Jack realized he might not be the only one walking out of these woods with a secret. The tension in the clearing was palpable as the bikers reluctantly led the suited men toward the freshly buried spot. Jack followed quietly from the shadows, each step calculated, his heart pounding. The leader of the suits stood by as one of his men retrieved a shovel and began digging. The bikers exchanged uneasy glances, shifting their weight as if ready to bolt at the first sign of trouble. The digging stopped with a hollow thud. The man with the shovel paused, then looked to his boss, who nodded. Carefully, the group unearthed a metal case, its surface scratched and dented, but clearly important. The suited leader knelt, flipping open the latches. Inside was something Jack hadn't expected. Stacks of documents, a hard drive, and what looked like coded messages. This wasn't about drugs or weapons. This was intelligence, the kind of information wars were fought over. "Is this all of it?" the suited man demanded. The grizzled biker hesitated. "Yeah, it's everything we found." But the leader's gaze darkened, and his hand moved to his side. Jack tensed as he caught the glint of a concealed firearm. Before the biker could react, the man spoke again, his tone colder than ever. "Two bad loose ends are bad for business." Just as the situation erupted into chaos, with shouts and the deafening crack of gunfire, Jack sprang into action. Using the confusion, he darted toward the case. His CIA instincts took over. Whatever was in there couldn't fall into the wrong hands. Grabbing the hard drive, he sprinted back into the woods as the firefight intensified behind him. But as he reached his vehicle, Jack realized the twist wasn't over. The hard drive had a tracker, and its red light blinked steadily in the darkness. Someone else was already hunting for it, and now they were hunting for him. Jack drove through the dark, winding roads, his mind racing. The blinking tracker on the hard drive taunted him, a reminder that he'd stepped into something far bigger than a simple exchange in the woods. He knew he couldn't keep the device for long. It wasn't safe. But what was on it? Why was it worth bloodshed? Pulling over at a desolate rest stop, Jack opened his laptop and quickly plugged in the drive. Encrypted files popped up, layers of secrecy that screamed high-level espionage. But one file caught his eye, a simple folder marked Project Sentinel. Jack didn't need to open it to know this wasn't something he could handle alone. This was government-level dangerous. He pulled out his phone and dialed an old contact, someone he trusted. "I've got something," he said quietly. "And it's big." As he drove off into the night, Jack knew one thing. This wasn't over. It was just beginning.